first to 5, exact game count is not going to matter. This is the marquee matchup for Group E. Kelvin on the left, DIAO over on your right. Oh, and double early misdrop there from DIAO, and another couple of early misdrops from Kelvin. It looks like both players going to have to re-warm up to the TEC handling. Again, given what we've seen already from Kelvin and DIAO this far, I definitely think that DIAO has the advantage when it comes to being more efficient. The speed is roughly the same. Can't really speed it up too much more between them. So honestly, I think it's really just gonna come down to a battle of like the phase threes, in my opinion. Just a little bit of advantage for Kelvin might be enough to push it their way. 57 Ultimatrist there from DIAO. Kelvin not able to get the oh, but they're able to get the curb tris. Never mind the efficiency within the zone. That extra damage really putting a little bit of a spring into their step from that zone. And DIAO with a little bit more garbage on their board, and oh, the double Z is not quite favorable for them. Kelvin cashing out on all of their resources, trying to put DIAO into an unfortunate situation going into phase 3. Kelvin actually leads in points. We do have the Z piece misdrop, but there are the pieces in queue for Kelvin to fix it pretty easily. And as soon as DIAO has gotten that full zone meter, they trigger phase 3, but there's a lot of misdrops. The garbage well has been cut off for the most part. DIAO only able to get 30 attack from that zone meter. Kelvin in a much more favorable position. T-spin on line 19, 68 Ultimatrist from Kelvin, and more than a full board's helping of garbage that DIAO's going to have to deal with. DIAO able to get all the garbage off the board, frantically building up a bit of what's there for the 4 wide, is trying to do the mental calculations. Is there enough for the combo to sustain them? It will be sufficient to, at the very least, earn another quarter zone and perhaps even a half zone. But no, going to let it go before the half zone charges so they can get a quarter zone that much more quick. And able to survive the initial onslaught, Kelvin having a bit of difficulty keeping that offense up, and a T-piece misdrop in a very bad time. Going to give DIAO a little bit more of an opportunity to clean up this stack and start clawing back some more momentum. Kelvin going for an offensive zone. It's going to be full, but it's relying on a lot of skims for its damage. 30 lines out of the stack of Hexatris. DIAO accepts some garbage before sending the zone of their own. Having faith in their own digging abilities, can be pulling off essentially the same zone. Kelvin barely relying on the SRS. I can't even tell if that was a misdrop or not. I don't think it was, but that was a very terrifying gamble to go for. All right. Oh, DIAO with the eyepiece misdrop. It's going to make things a little bit more precarious to deal with over on that left-hand side. Able to still dig through it. But it's really just a battle of who can dig faster and more efficient. But unfortunately, the pieces are tying in the center for Kelvin. And with essentially even stats, the Kelvin is going to take game 1. But both players fighting tooth and nail. This is going to be quite the set to close things out tonight. Again, a lot of misdrops from Kelvin, a lot of misdrops from DIAO as well. I feel like DIAO's been at least a tiny bit more consistent than Kelvin, respectively. But with both players, okay, never. I need to stop talking. All right, but given everything that's been happening, I think DIAO is a little bit more poised to make the most of these situations. Kelvin, though, with an extremely efficient zone, is going to have to end it a little bit early at 19. 51 Perfectress. DIAO is already well under their own zone. We're going to have to see. Are we going to see the 20? No! Misplaces the S piece from DIAO. Does not skim line 21 for the Ultimatress. And that damage is going to merely equal Kevin's zone rather than sending anything back. However, despite all of this, DIAO still has the score advantage as they are rapidly approaching phase 3. Kelvin having to rely on a lot of combos, even amidst phase two, which although, oh no, again, another misdrop for Kelvin. Forcing that zone, it is at least a little bit friendly on the timer as they are a phase two zone. But DIAO only has to accept but half a board, and they decide to halt off on that, opting to use their zone meter to counteract most of this. But we have an early misdrop that basically stunts any bit of attack that that zone was going to provide. And now Kelvin all of a sudden is in a very strong situation, and DIAO is going to have to rely on the classic DIAO stack in order to get out of the situation. And it looks very well underway. Very strong downstacking fundamentals from DIAO. Outing for the T-spin single to increase that combo damage on the later skims of that board. Kelvin hoping to try and do a little bit more timing, but the longer they have to try and keep up speed with DIAO, the more likely these misdrops are to occur. Able to secure the Tetris and keep the clean stack going. But right now, I think Kelvin is not in a position to get through as much of the garbage as DIAO is. Only 22 from that zone, 41 Dodecatris from DIAO, and the ability to get through more lines of their garbage than Kelvin was the deciding factor. And the misdrop Z, I believe, is going to be curtain. DIAO, 2 straight games. Both of them have honestly had a little bit of a sacrifice to speed, very evenly matched, but DIAO just keeps getting a little bit more in out of each of these scenarios, keeps drawing themselves closer and closer to a win every single round. That it's probably going to have to take a substantial advantage into phase three for Kelvin to be able to have a bit of a breather going into phase three, as even slight advantage for Kelvin has not been the easiest position for them to play from. Well, it's a lot of skimming to be done early for Kelvin's perspective, but able to get a very quick spike there onto DIAO's board. DIAO greeds for the DT cannon using a T piece to set it up, but has a misdrop and needs to utilize the SRS techniques in order to survive. But Kelvin realizes that's not a strong zone from DIAO. This is my chance to send a strong attack. There's the 20 Ultimatris. Gonna need to be a full board of garbage for DIAO. Is able to counteract it with this zone attack, 25 Decahexatris. But honestly, Kelvin was not able to get a lot done in that time. And honestly, that the ability for DIAO to send that so quickly has kind of brought things back to even as opposed to slight disadvantage. Oh, and that is not the way to set up that T-spin triple overhang, unfortunately, on DIAO's end. But that is, again, 2 premature zones for DIAO this match. Kelvin has pushed it into phase 3, has a full zone meter, but doesn't even need to let it rip. And 2 mistakes, really, for DIAO is kind of all it takes. Kelvin able to secure, again, as we mentioned before, it might need to be a heavy advantage going into phase 3 for Kelvin to solidify these rounds. But honestly, if you barely make it into phase 3, I'd still consider that a really nice game for Kelvin. Only 1 game behind in this first to 5. Ooh, Kelvin greeting for the Tetrises. Very little room at the top of this board, but understands the of efficient play, and that's what's going to mean the difference between an L and a W for Kelvin. Still perfectly clean up until line 18. 57 Perfectress is very substantial, and that will force a zone from DIAO. A lot of T-spin singles as well. Technically, the more efficient method of sending garbage. Oh, the eyepiece does cut a little bit early, but honestly, kind of puts DIAO's board in a little bit of a better state. Has a lot of clean garbage to work with. A lot of eyepieces, pieces for just free ammunition. And although Kelvin is at risk of putting things into phase 3, DIAO's probably going to be the one in favor of having it go to phase 3 early. Kelvin does send it into phase three before DL is able to trigger a zone, but it looks like DL is going to be just sitting in favor of having that full zone meter. Oh my goodness, the full zone from Kelvin is not enough to counter DL's out of zone attack. Again, multiple T-spin doubles, having to use that T-spin triple kick. Beautiful use of the Tetris to keep it perfectly clean. 58 Perfectress. Kelvin's going to have to counter essentially this entire attack with nothing but a half zone to their name. And I think that T might be a misdrop, and that's probably going to be curtains. There is way too much garbage coming in way too quickly. Over another full board of garbage just for the insult to injury. And the consistency out of Dia has been unparalleled, as they are now 3 games to Kelvin's 1. Again, we see okay, never mind. I was going to comment on the 6-3, but we've got some confetti happening on DL's board. Continued misdrops back to back to back. And Kelvin, just a couple more efficient T-spins might be enough to push DL, but DL able to just barely gain access to that garbage well. Oh my goodness, but the greedy play from DL, and DL's going to have to spend a premature zone. And that is fantastic news for Kelvin. Kelvin able to get the T-spin triple. Needs to open up this garbage well and utilize as many eye pieces as possible to get as much out of this zone. 51 Perfectress, that's a lot for DIAO to handle, even for someone that's been able to send so much damage outside of zone to begin with. Kelvin looking to try and just match with efficiency. Is going to be taking quite a lot of garbage, but again, has zone meter advantage, and if they're able to recover, oh no, but that's a terrible 1-2 misdrop for Kelvin. Does not have a lot of good skim scenarios available. And this might be a top out before phase 3. Having to rely on pole vaults, but can't get to, just barely has that quarter zone, but is not going to do much more than just prolong the inevitable. DIAO is 1 game away from advancing into our top 16 on the more preferred side. Well, I guess I don't know if it's like winner side or lose side. I forgot to look exactly how the format shakes up. But again, having the advantage going into top 16 is going to be all the more important, as we saw with tournaments like Square One and even the Matrix, that going into the final phase of the tournament with the advantage is a very important part of the process. Oh, and a couple more bad misdrops though from DIAO. Able to be worked around, but all right, Kelvin looks like they're going to be the first to pop zone. All right, debating about what is going to be the option to get them the most bang for their buck in this zone. 57 Ultimatress. Didn't quite catch how much was already in that queue, but I think it was not a full board's worth of garbage. Kelvin trying to answer 55 from DIAO, and it's going to be a near perfect neutralization. A little bit more man-made cheese for DIAO to skim through, but doing so pretty well. Kelvin right now with a bit of kind of ST stacking for the most part over on that left-hand side, and just try and keep it as efficient as humanly possible. Zoning right before going into phase 3, a bit of an odd decision, but it will trigger phase 3 before DIAO is able to get that full zone meter. However, the full zone meter now is on deck for DIAO, and they're going to zone immediately. Again, might have been able to clean up that board a little bit more, but I think just value the ability of making sure that Kelvin can't build up another zone. It's only going to deliver about 5 lines of garbage to Kelvin's board. However, it looks like it could be enough to still just push things a little bit more in DIAO's favor if DIAO's able to continue this ability to just keep getting through all this garbage the slightest bit quicker than Kelvin. Force Kelvin to kind of play hyper offensive, which again in phase 3 can work out, but more than anything, the ability to bring that stack down and earn the right to use more of your own stack has really been what's effective for just about everyone in Summer Showdown. And DL's not really making a great case for that. Never mind. Uh, Things are getting quite dicey. And actually, in the meantime, Kelvin is opting for a full zone meter, offering DL the chance to manually clean up the stack. But with a misdrop that's happening, not going to be able to get a lot of resources. DL is going to have to rely on the down stack combo, but it's not going to happen in time. And that misdrop amidst Kelvin's zone is going to be enough for Kelvin to earn another round 2-4. Again, these points individually don't matter, but they do draw Kelvin closer to a potential upset. Things are definitely getting very troubling. Oh, that's a terrible misshot for Kelvin. Really immediately closing off that well and just closing off all opportunities. Oh, but DL as well is not in the best position to take advantage of it. Does have the full zone meter, but needs to kind of find their own method of accessing the clean garbage. And the eye gets misdropped, and you can see as well with the halt in their speed. They definitely were expecting the line clear delay, but that's unfortunately just more time wasted. Kelvin right now trying to work aggressively with the center will get as much pressure off as possible and force the pop from DL, but okay, it looks like Kelvin actually just going to be going for the zone play this time around, not even worrying about DL's current board state. Oh, mini T-spin there for Kelvin, 52 Perfectress. And oh, a misdrop there for DL's side of things. 37, but that's still so much garbage over to Kelvin. Over half a board despite being appearing to be really far behind. All right, and a couple of misdrops there from Kelvin, preventing them from really grabbing a strong advantage going into phase three. As we mentioned prior, that might be something that they're desperately looking for. And able to get a little bit of combos. Both players sitting at or near max zone meter. Kelvin going to rely on the combo down stack for a lot of this damage. And DIAO only about 4 lines of garbage on the board. 46 Decahexatress from Kelvin. DIAO still playing extremely efficient, getting T-spins where it just doesn't look possible. But another 50-plus line attack in the middle of phase three, keeping the garbage off of DIAO's board and keeping the pressure up on their opponents. Oh my goodness, that was such a greedy take, nearly topping out Kelvin when DIAO was on match points. Would have been a fatal mistake, but honestly, the quick decision thinking, and DIAO right now in a really tough spot. Having a couple of misdrops, and Kelvin takes another from what looked like an incredibly dire situation. All it takes is a couple of misdrops high up on the board in phase three, and that can be a life changer. Kelvin now 2 games away from potentially pulling this upset. DIAO, however, 1 game victorious would solidify the end of this pool and move everything into our top 16. All right, a little bit of hesitation there from Kelvin. Not quite sure if they wanted to play a little more aggressively or just waiting out some of these attacks. Oh, that's a tough dig for Kelvin. Has to sacrifice the T-piece if they want to prevent having to delay that dig any further. All right, Kelvin has earned access over to that 7-2 well. And DL still keeping it efficient, has had to skim a little bit. But again, so has Kelvin. Gonna love a lot of like skim into T-spin for DL. That's gonna be 53 out of the Perfectress, 51 of the Perfectress from Kelvin, keeping things as even as they could possibly get. Oh my goodness, what a greedy setup there for the dono. That was almost like a do not dono from DIAO, but oh my goodness, it's just, you know what? Honestly, DIAO has a game to give, and DIAO says if the greed is what's keeping me here, the greed is what's going to get me this win. But just setting the O piece over on the top of the garbage, just it really is like any mistake in that process would have immediately ejected them into a tiebreaker scenario. And given the amount of mishaps that have happened, that is an extremely risky gamble to take. 65 ultimate tris from KELVIN. DL trying to keep it efficient, but the S piece is going to cut this efficiency short. But still, 58 out of the 18 perfectus from DIAO, keeping it as close as can be. And really just coming down to players making misdrops, swaying the momentum little by little. A couple of skims there for KELVIN, trying to get as much out of this build as they possibly can. A little bit of a misdrop, but a beautiful setup there from DIAO to keep it efficient, still avoiding breaking back-to-back at all costs, with the exception of down stacking. And even then, it's been a pretty difficult thing to see. All right, and the 48 line Decahexatris comes out from KELVIN. 49 out from DIAO. Both players essentially erasing all of that garbage with the helps of some clever down stacks. And we're essentially looking like phase one with a little bit of unfortunate cheese, but this is well into phase three at 3 minutes time. This is such a strong showing from both KELVIN and DIAO, keeping things extremely close. Again, the DIAO may have a game to give, and KELVIN just, playing for match point, but oh my goodness, having to play very precariously around these misdrops. DIAO decides to go for game. This is going to be a full zone meter. Not sure how KELVIN's planning on digging through this. 47 Decahexatris from DIAO. Let's see what the option is from KELVIN. The misdrop is so unfortunate. Opts not to go for the IP skim. KELVIN, 35 out of the perfectress. DIAO is scrambling, trying to find this knockout blow, and is misdropping catastrophically in the process. I believe might be able to find a T-spin triple. No, just going to be relying on the skims underneath. Both of them pushing each other to their breaking point here in game 8. DIAO finding a way to earn some fractals and other T-spins over on that right-hand side. Converts to the T-spin triple. Oh, and the misdrop there from KELVIN. Really high up on the board. DIAO, very little garbage. This could be a potential 50 zone in phase 3. Does not need to fire zone to counteract KELVIN's attack. And the O piece cuts in the center. And after a nearly 5-minute round between KELVIN and DIAO, the misdrops finally doing KELVIN in, as DIAO is going to emerge victorious